Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the afternoon session of the second day of the National Scrabble Championship 2018. We're joining a match between two players currently towards the top of the table. Ed Martin coming over here with his Swedish ways, trying to take our title back with him. We may be leaving Europe, but they want our titles. And in true foreign form, he's starting off with a bowl sheet. Ed has been playing extremely well, as we'll have seen from an earlier game of his. Lewis, after his drubbing earlier on at the hands of Stu Harkness, has held it together and still very much in contention. So it should be an excellent game, but Ed obviously off to a flyer straight away. Just keep you updated with the standings at the moment. There is one other player equal with Ed on 10 wins out of 12 so far, and that is the guy who has to be the story of the tournament so far, JB Jones, coming in with a rating of 162 and currently sitting on tournament rating of 204. And ladies and gentlemen, I think you'll agree that he's really the only player that I haven't completely destroyed. But in all seriousness, he's the only player who hasn't really made a major mistake or something that I would really question. Some of the plays have been marginal. Maybe he could have tweaked them very slightly, but very, very impressed so far with certainly my first viewing of his play. And I definitely expect him to be a 180 plus or 190 plus of the future if he carries on at this rate. So onwards and upwards. Lewis, lovely Vowley rack, opting to play something which I believe is a kind of candle, a boogie. Better play is almost certainly Baguio in that situation, Baguio. Achieves the same thing, but keeps the E instead of the A. Ed sitting with a really pleasantly balanced rack. Would have been nice if he'd had an N in order to play Hohetzins, but since he's still got the H, he might as well play Firezols and get rid of all his tiles. He might overlook it though and play Zoe or Zoa down the left-hand side of Boogie. Very, very tempting if you don't see Thiazols. But as we know before, in the Uthike game, I was making excuses for why Ed didn't see something, and he promptly smacked down Uthike. So I'm not going to make excuses. We fully expect Ed to play Thiazols here. It's laughable that he would play Zoa or Zoe. Excellent. That was supposed to be humorous, Ed. You were supposed to miss that. And Lewis has challenged, adding 5, so it's up to 76. So great start there by Ed. Lewis does have a comeback bonus though. His rack has matured into Enabler, which will play quite sweetly down onto Bolshi, making Bolshia. So although Ed is 138 points up, there will be a bonus coming down, and importantly, that bonus will open up the top half of the board. So Lewis will certainly have opportunity to get back into this game. It's the kind of situation where, as much as you hope that your opponent enjoys the game, you really want to be sitting there with absolute crap right now so that you get a 200-point lead in 3 moves. Lewis has got Enabler set up in his rack. He'll just be making sure he's not missing anything. But Enabler only combines with an S and a T to make rentable and Enablers. Enabler. Yep. Only playable bonus. Down it goes. Ed with a nicely balanced rack. Dear listener, for those of you out there who like 6-letter words that don't take an S on the end, sadly you'll be disappointed with this rack, but it does have funkier, which does take an S for future reference. So options here. A number of decent scoring options for Ed. Plays such as Kenaf, K-E-N-A-F through the E of Enabler. Really ruining the rack though, keeping I-O-U. Other option is Zouk, Z-O-U-K, from the Z for 34. Bum, 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 bum. No 8s that I can see. I should add actually funkier you can spell with a CK. But make sure you include the N just in case. Other options, depending on how keen Ed is to start closing down the board at this early stage, would be plays such as Fino, F-I-N-O, down the left-hand side of Enabler for 36. If you want to offload the U, F-A-U-N, on the right-hand side of Enabler. Personally, I quite like Zouk at the moment, but static valuation really has the some of the plays I've mentioned towards the top, so it's actually considering funkier through the N of Enabler towards the top. Zouk being equally scory, very, very slightly behind in terms of raw valuation. And then Azuki scores 2 more points, but FON slightly poorer than FAIM. UFO at J1 making FE and ON, and then Fino make up the top 5 choices. Kenaf, because of the weakness of its keep, the IOU keep, somewhat down the rankings. I think I'd go for funky at this point. I think I'd be happy with the Zouk play. Yeah. Great play by Ed, agreeing with me. And conveniently, it also happens to be one of the best moves. So, Lewis, trouble with few vowels, good scoring potential though. If he really wants to, he can offload a lot of tiles quickly by playing something such as D-worm through the E of Enabler. If the E were further over, he'd have Dewdrop, which would be quite nice. Oh, except he's not got an O, he's got the Q. Dear listener, it's somewhat worse than I thought. So he's changed 5 and kept DR, getting rid of his Q. Simulation suggests that up draw through the U and the A of Boogie and Firezols would be worth looking at, but I'm not going to complain. I think he needs to get rid of the crap. Back to Ed. Ed is sensing an whiff of victory right now. He will definitely be considering options to begin to block the board at this stage. parallel players down the side of Enabler screaming out to me. He's going to be 130 up after the next move, likely. Alternatively, he could just take the raw score with things like Nif down the side of Boogie. There are a few options here worth considering, certainly. Nif scoring 38, keeping WHA, good scoring potential. And certainly if that position around Enabler stays open, you'll be expecting to score up 35 to 40 on the next move. Plays down the side of Enabler already, things such as Win, WHIN, on the left-hand side, Juan, HWAN. Okay, he's playing half for 37. Win is not the greatest keep, but scores 37, keeps things ticking over. Restrict plays through the L, takes out easy, decent scores for hooking Zook. Lewis very quickly put down etc. Ed has overdrawn and has mixed his tiles in, so Lewis will be picking from tiles that Ed has kept. He's turned over the Q, QNT. I imagine that the T might be going back, possibly. And Ed has started Lewis. Oh, it's all getting confusing. Lewis is currently cogitating about what to put back in the bag. Q, N, or T. Q is definitely going back. Get the T back. Yeah, there we go. So Lewis has played Exedra, scoring very heavily. It takes an E and an S on the back end. Ed, as we know, has kept Win. Lewis knows he's got the Q and at least one N. Lewis decided to put the T back in the bag because the T was most likely to give easy offload options for the Q, I'd imagine, such as QAT through Enabler. However, Ed still has QIN across the top of Exedra before I look for anything else, which would seem to be a relatively immediate play. Yeah. No undue thought needed there. Lewis, of course, would have expected or hoped that the N would have been left out floating, highly unlikely, for Vandalic. I bring back memories of a final of the Wesper Championship a few years ago, where Lewis had Mandalic, which he overlooked in a crucial game, but he went on to play Mandioca to win that game. So hopefully he studied his blank and Dalek bonuses since then. So we find ourselves in a situation where Lewis is now 106 adrift. Ed has conveniently offloaded the two tiles that Lewis knew he had in his rack. Lewis needs to keep scoring, keep the board open. The board is certainly open with the opportunity for the hook from Exedra. Plays across from the S of Thiazol, plays through the L of Bolshia, plays under the NE. Huge amounts of opportunity here. Although Ed is 106 up, he certainly won't be feeling particularly confident about that lead just yet. Lewis has got a nice scoring play of Clavi, C-L-A-V-I, making QI. 29. He could potentially play something across the top of Zook, making Dur, but there's not a huge amount of options there currently. To go with my thought process, the static sim is going just sticking Clavi at the top. It's one of the joint highest scoring play. That scores 29, and Ada, AIDA, across the top of Zook, scores 29. Dear listener at home, would you be confident that Exedra did not take an L? Would you be confident that Exedra does not take an L? Most importantly, do you care? The answer in this situation is that neither of them take an L, and only Exedra takes an S. Exedra pluralizes with a straight E, no S. I should add, incidentally, to those of you who are listening who are likely to be playing in the World Championship or indeed playing me at any point in the future, it would be utterly unacceptable, ungentlemanly, or unladylike to play any of the words that I have taught you in my commentary against me in order to win the game. Thank you very much. Okay, Lewis opting to play valid. It's one of the least limiting of its options. It takes out plays across onto the B to an extent with enabler. That's not really much of a worry. It doesn't interfere with the floating A of enabler. It doesn't interfere with the plays underneath NE. Doesn't score as much, so he's 85 behind still. Ed very quickly plonking down Jawan, which I think is likely to be his highest score. Anagram, as we know, of Ajwan is not his highest score, actually Way, W-A-Y, his highest score underneath half. But Jawan takes out the danger underneath the NE, takes out the floating A, restricts the R of Exedra. So it has to be the right play. Lewis, in the meantime, has a very claggy rack. Probably wishing he had an R instead of the T to play scraggly. Still no E seen for that tantalizing Exedra hook. There are 7 in the bag. Lewis's highest score here is likely to be something like Tay, underneath half, but who in their right mind would do that? You'd be taking out the S, you'd be frustrating the S hooks on half. You'd be leaving yourself with CLGG. I think we can all say if he does that, it will be GGTY. Of course, it scores so much the simulation is saying to play it, or rather the static simulator is saying to play it, because the next highest score after that is 8 points fewer and the keep is not that much better. The question will be he be forced into it? Another option would be something like claggy through the L of enabler. That reduces the threat of the Exedra hook. It does sort out the rack very well, keeping LT. Any play, well, it frustrates the S on half. Any play down from the Y or through the Y will make plays onto half even more difficult, which really then will make the only flexible opening on the board that S of Thiosols. And given that Lewis is 131 behind, and Claggy will still leave him over 100 behind, it's probably not the right play, unfortunately, as tempting as it might be. Might need to start considering plays down the side of Boogie. So C12, something like TYG, very, very low. We're looking at the championship player at the moment, the Sims, 1.26% chance of winning with TYG. Claggy 1.05, Tay 1.12. Already it's quite bleak for Lewis in this situation. Probably influenced by the fact that the E's are not seen and we're expecting a big play from Ed, which we know we're not going to get. But Ed, Lewis playing the right move, TYG. He'd taken his time over that because TYG doesn't really create any particularly dynamic openings. Obviously, there are no front hooks to the TI. You know that Ed has come up rosy, potentially just dump rosy, making tigs. But yeah, he's deciding to take out the threat of exit. Can't really blame him on that. Another option, utilising the position I mentioned earlier on across sort of Zook, would have been Dormy. Sorts out the rack very well, keeping RS. But doesn't do a huge amount in terms of defence. And when your 2 bonuses up, like Ed is, you really should make sure of the game. Of course, Dormy scoring heavily is likely to make sure of the game as well. You can't really blame him for playing my. So Lewis, needing a U for mucilage or a Y for glycemia, neither of which are forthcoming. Two S's and 2 blanks still unseen. From his point of view. Ed has a number of options on the next play that will really gum this board up. Something as simple as Vors, VORS, and halves would really remove any threat from the whole right-hand side of the board. Well, most of the right-hand side of the board, of course, the S of Thiazol would still be floating, but then a play through that S would kill plays underneath Tig, and of course things through the S. So in 2 moves, Ed could have this board completely sealed. So Lewis has to be thinking not only score and balance, but keeping it open. Ideally, he'd like to be playing something down the side of Boogie, making tick right now to create an opening for Etic or Otic. But doesn't have that option currently. Short of playing something like CAG. But CAG isn't great because then you tie up the YE. You can no longer hook anything on the front. So your bonus would have to end in E or O. If he really wants to throw caution to the wind, he could just play Etic now and set up the M hook. Okay, the name of keeping score ticking over. He's played Meal, keeping CIG. One S and 2 blanks unseen from Ed's point of view. Meal does give him a bit of a headache. It's all of a sudden it's harder for him to control that part of the board. He's got a lot of plays that score 10, 15 points onto Meal. He could play Sov. Trod would be a potential underneath, but the chances of your opponent having a big counter score are high. Ed has opted to play Trod for 26, taking him up to 362. At this stage, maybe he shouldn't. Well, he shouldn't worry about a medium score to come back along the bottom from that, because after all, Lewis is more than a bonus and a big move ahead. Behind. What you don't want to be doing is giving away big scores currently. My stream is frozen at this end. So this is probably where the most exciting stuff is going to be happening. Action music. Nothing's happened. Okay. Lewis with the dreadful rack. Ed with a rack from heaven. Ed has unblockable bonuses. He has reshave, at least in the bottom left. He has several options from Jawad. Lewis has a really grotty rack. Yeah, Lewis has just played to score whatever he can. Ed would have had adverse underneath Trod. No, he wouldn't, because far's not a word. So looking through options, my feed is frozen again. Ed had a sever underneath Tig as well instead of reshave. And he's played a sever, very good. Now, Lewis has definitely had the rough end of the tiles in this championship so far in the games that we've seen. I think he's played strongly with racks that have had very little potential, and often in the board situation he's been against a rock and a hard place. 186 behind, he's definitely not going to win this game now. 15 tiles unseen from his point of view. He needs to bonus 3 times consecutively with his opponent not playing a move. Ed might have dreadful tiles, but he's still got things like App, APP across the top of Zook. 31. Lewis choosing to score a little bit. Best play possibly in that situation was to play something such as Tui underneath the queue, opening up parallel plays underneath Chewy, but really the options are quite limited. Lewis enjoying the fruits of a very vowel heavy bag while Ed has none. If Ed wanted to block now, he could play something such as Wept through the E of Enabler to really take out that Jawan hook and rub it in. That's exactly what he's done. Lewis wishes that an RN would bring him Cointreau right now. Sadly, I can't see him getting his way out of this. He can make some relatively low potential scoring openings, but nothing that Lewis has is going to work very well on this board. In case you're interested, dear listener, Cointreau is actually now good. Anagrams are recaution, cautioner, and autocrine. I'll leave you with the thought, does autocrine take an S? Okay, enough thinking time, it doesn't. So from Lewis's point of view, 9 tiles unseen in the bag. Still a blank unseen, still an S unseen, very, very bonus friendly. Does he make an opening and hope to get a conciliatory bonus, which will mean that he'll only lose by about 150? Or does he try and keep it tight in order to not give Ed a bonus so that he loses by almost 300? If I were Lewis, I'd be looking at potential plays, 8-letter plays down onto the A of a sever. Things like Nocturia, perhaps. Yeah, he's played off Alu. I mean, at this stage, there's not a lot between anything. Toluic across the top of Wept, the best score. So Ed with almost 13 minutes left on his rack picked out the second blank. Lewis picked out Dross. Even though looking at what was left in the bag, he was likely to pick out duplicates of what he'd kept. Ed has played PES. Not sure what it achieves. Probably just not opening is his focus, so that Lewis doesn't get a bonus, which he doesn't have. For those who are interested, Ed's last rack, I think, makes Corn Pone and Panancy, but no sevens. His current rack makes no sevens. So 5 tiles unseen from Lewis's point of view, which isn't going to be very nice to him because 4 of those 5 tiles are EUOI. And an N. So yeah, no point in trying to go for a bonus. He's just got to take the score. Nice is the best play. Scores 29. Wyatt has had the rub of the tiles. He's been a little bit unlucky not to have any of the vowels, considering that there were so many left in the bag. Okay, our tracking is a little off. We have an E that we don't have. Oh, there is one in the bag. Oh, of course, there's 5. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, I can't count. So Ed will now know that Lewis has nothing. He will have a really good shot if he just plays off NO on Boogie. If he picks out an O, he will have Endosark on the right hand side and Cordons or Condors on the left hand side. If he picks out, so I think, so from his point of view, 3 out of 8 unseen tiles are O's that will give him bonuses in 2 different places. We happen to know that obviously what's in the bag is an E, so he won't. He will have encoders on the right-hand side, but by that point Lewis will know what he has. So you would think that Lewis would block it. Worth considering if Ed has something that makes a little bit more of a flexible opening on the left-hand side. It could just actually, yes, he just plays off the N onto Y, E, to create the snide hook. Which gives him a lot of options if he picks out one of the vowels. So if Ed plays NYE and picks out an E, he has things such as cinders on the left-hand side, encoders on the right. If he picks out the I, similarly, cinders down the left. If he picks out the O, as we mentioned earlier on, endosarc on the right, cordons on the left, and the U, he has uncords on the left. And Lewis would be limited to just a really low scoring, well, he will be limited to a really low scoring play anyway, but it'll have to be a play to block. Okay, interesting. But Ed passing up the opportunity to add on 50 points of spread there. So we happen to know that if he'd picked out the E, which he would have done, he would have gone out with a bonus. Unsurprisingly, simulation suggests that playing NYE is by far the best play in that situation. So it won't be much consolation to Lewis, but he's been let off a little bit there. Only losing by the best part of 200 instead of almost 250. It's a funny play, I must admit. I'm not sure what it achieved. I mean, going back to what we were saying earlier on, or maybe it was yesterday, I said you should never play a move just for the sake of playing a move and getting tiles on the board. I mean, maybe Ed just thought I'll just score as much as possible and get the game over with. But you should always be looking to maximise your opportunity. And I didn't really do that. Highest scoring move there for Lewis would have been to play Uni. Underneath the Q. Ed can offload probably most tiles by playing something like Crena, C-R-E-N-A. It's not going to score a huge amount. might, well, among the higher scores he's going to have the option for will be things like EN under Mac, making Mace and N. Scrabble, they often say, is a game about numbers rather than words. And then some people argue back it's a game about words as much as it is numbers. But the third factor is timing. And I think what we've seen in this game very, very clearly is that a lot of it can be about timing. When Lewis played Exedra, you were holding your breath, waiting for someone to play a huge play, making Exedra, but it never came. Despite the fact that there were half a dozen E's still unseen. And if Lewis had drawn one of those E's at that early stage, he probably would have played down the right-hand side, opened it up, had a lot more dynamic options down there, as well as having an extra 50 points on his rack, on his score sheet. And the game could have been a little bit different. As it is, he's still played strongly. He's given himself opportunities. As you would expect at the level of these two players, any alternative plays, possibly with the exception of Nye. I think Nye was not playing Nye was a mistake, an error. I think everything else has been pretty soundly played. The decisions have generally been very good. And Ed spotted thiazoles, which is great. I sound surprised. I shouldn't be. I'm only joking. I think actually, just as I reflect upon the closing moves of this game, Nye, not playing Nye has another probably more important negative impact on the way that this will pan out, in that I'm going to have less chance to get a coffee. Ed now is going to play out very slowly. And I can hear the coffee being poured. Okay, Ed has played something. Oh, Ed has played the EN that I mentioned earlier on. Retrod would have been probably the highest score he had in that situation. And Lewis has played out with TI underneath the Q. Yeah, so Ed, like a gentleman he is, commiserating with Lewis. It was a really rough time. I think I'm going to leave these two to mull it over rather than go in and talk about the NYE controversy, because, as I said earlier on, I've only got a limited amount of time to get coffee now because of all that kerfuffle. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us for this match, which was slightly less close than we were hoping, but certainly very soundly played by both sides. I will be back with you in the very near future to commentate our next exciting pair-up in the 2018 National Scrabble Championship.